I came out of New York. I've been in Hawaii for 52 years. And
Smart choice. I've lived in New York and I was there for 17 years, and that was enough.
you know this symbol?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And this kind of comes from the Japanese because the pinky kind of represents the female and the thumb represents the male in Japanese. So even though Hawaii, I don't think did the shaka because of Japan, when I do this in Japan, they go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because if you say, like, I have a date, you kind of go like that, and that guy say, like, you say, what do you want to do? And you go like that. The guy says, oh, you want to go meet some girls. Okay. So,
I did not know that.
yeah. And the girls would go like, yeah, and I want to meet some guys. So, whatever.
We're
So be
learning
careful where you
all,
throw that sign. Be
I
careful where you
guess.
throw that sign.
We find ourselves with a date real fast when we get to Japan.
Enjoy you guys' podcasts and your broadcasting. You bring a lot of energy, a lot of fun, just a happy, smiley vibe, and I like it. Too
Oh,
many people
thank you.
too many people try and make someone like this serious. You gotta be nah.
Yeah.
Training and fighting, that's it. But when you're talking about it and presenting it, just nothing like a couple of cute girls just kind of talking all crazy about it. So yeah, we all love it. So keep it going, girl.
Yay.
Oh,
Keep it
you're
going.
so nice.
Thank you for listening.
Well, and we started just as fans.
Yeah.
We knew a little bit about sumo, but not a lot. And we
Yeah.
were very clear about that when we started. We said,
Yeah,
look,
yeah,
we're learning.
I know like 10% of what I should know, but it's okay. It's just main thing is just have fun and enjoy it. It's just,
Yes.
Yeah.
we're
And
not members of the Ozumo hierarchy. So no, we have fun and we talk about it and we talk smack, we talk stink, and we talk nice. So it's all good. Okay.
well, thank you for giving us a little bit of your time today. I really
Oh,
appreciate
sure,
that.
sure.
You have been on my list of interviews for a while. And
Uh-oh.
there's several reasons. One is I just think it behooves us Americans to know about our own sumo history and to
Okay.
know, who's come before us and who have been the major players. And everyone that we have talked to, every single person has mentioned your name and has said, even that you're the father of American sumo, which I know you don't agree with, but
No,
you
no.
have been in sumo for 50 years or more. So
Yeah,
you've
about
been
50. Yeah.
around.
I'm
I
more like
mean,
the old fud is what I am, but that's okay. Thank you.
well,
Okay.
you are one of the few
Well,
people that has
thank you.
been involved in sumo in Japan as well as in America, both as a wrestler and as a coach. And you've been honored both in America and Japan. Just in October, John Gunning wrote an article about
Oh, right,
you.
right, yeah.
And so I just said, you know what, it's time. One other reason I wanted to talk with you as well is, I've been trying to understand the sumo scene in Hawaii and who came first and who came second and where it is now and how you fit within that transmission
I
line.
can talk about that pretty well. Okay, yeah.
Great. You want to start with that?
Sure. So here's what I know about the sumo scene in Hawaii. Sumo came to Hawaii with the Japanese plantation workers that came to Hawaii in the late 1800s, like the 1880s and 1890s. Several shiploads of Japanese citizens that weren't making it economically in Japan, and the chance to come to Hawaii and work on a sugar plantation and have a job and whatever. So a lot of single men just jumped on that ship and said, yeah, I'll sign up for that. It's a future. It came across here, and Hawaii really needed those workers, and they were just incredibly successful in helping the plantations be viable entities. Their work was incredible, the work ethic that they brought. As the story kind of goes, and this is it's not written down, but it's pretty much passed down orally, is that they only had 1 day a week off. They had Sundays off. And they had almost no money. They worked hard for like pennies a day, and they lived in plantation camps. And the typical plantation mentality is, okay, you earn 10 cents for this week. I'm just making up a number. I don't know what it was. And 8 cents pays for your room and board. So you got 2 pennies that you can do with. So if you want a beer, then okay, now you have 1 penny left. So they actually never saved a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
But so they had Sundays off, and they did not have a lot of money, not a lot of stuff to do. So in each plantation, and about every 20 miles or so in Hawaii, there was another little sugar plantation. So there were like 30 of them. And each one had maybe 30 or 40 Japanese guys working there. So they'd just sit around on Sunday, what do you want to do? I don't know. And so sumo was always kind of an important part of Japan, and they knew that that was kind of like their tradition. So I think a couple of guys just said, if we just draw a circle in the dirt, like you see some of the Americans now when they do practice, they just go out and put a hose in the grass.
Mhm.
So they just drew a circle in the dirt. I think they took some of those old rice bags and stuff and made a little like fake mawashi out of it, and just played a little bit, like for a half an hour. They just fooled around, said yeah, yo, and just and acted like they're in Japan. And then they drank a little bottle of sake, and then they went back, slept, and the next day they went back to work for 12 hours a day. And so I think, every so often they would kind of meet at some of the stores that were like more central, not just for each little town. So the guy from this town would meet the guy from that town and say, hey, you know what we're doing? We were doing a little bit of sumo practice. The guy, oh, that's cool. So he went back to his camp and said, hey, you know what they're doing? Well, yeah, let's. So they never thought about competing against it. They just started doing it. So more and more it spread around. And one day I think some guys told the other guy, I bet our brothers could beat your guys. I don't think so, but well, let's get
Uh-huh.
together. Okay, so next week Sunday we'll meet at my place, and and bring 5 guys, and we'll just have fun, and we'll cook up some rice, and we'll have some sake or some beer or something afterwards. So just for fun, they just like two teams in Texas get together for joint practices or whatever. So they got together, tumbled around. It just evolved and evolved. By 1920, there were leagues all over Hawaii and all
Wow.
over California and all in Brazil, where all these workers had gone to these different places to work ag. A lot in Brazil, which has a huge Japanese population, a
Yeah.
lot in Hawaii and a lot in Southern California, the California growing area.
Hmm.
And they just started to kind of challenge each other. And pretty soon, like the hometowns would give the guy like $5. Here's money, Joe. You represented Kahuku, you represented like Cincinnati, really good. So we just, here's a little token for thank you guys, because everybody, they're Japanese guys and they're far, far from home. The only connection they have is kind of like, yeah, we get this thing that we get going once a month or whatever. It just grew. So the hometown the ladies eventually, because wives came over and guys got married, and they married some local girls
Mhm.
and some Japanese girls. It just started to like blossom. They started to say, we're not going back to Japan. We're going to live in Hawaii. And the second generation's kids grew up there and just, wow, this is kind of cool. They all got into sumo because they didn't play football, they didn't play basketball, but they could play a little bit. So the hometown would sew like kesamawashis for the guys, just hand sewn, fancy,
Oh,
not
wow.
not like Japan with the big gold and this, but they just had these things. And some of the tournaments, like in Maui, I saw some video. It was an old film shot in about 1926. I think there were like 10,000 spectators showed up. 10,000 spectators showed up in Maui to this giant like outdoor arena on the side of a mountain. They built
Mhm.
a big doyo down below. I think they had like 100 restaurants. So the ladies started cooking 2 days early, cooking rice and just making all chunko and just all these
Yeah.
different. They were selling it and making rice balls to feed the guys.
Yeah.
And you saw a car after these old-fashioned cars kind of riding down the hill, and like a string of like 1,000 cars coming down the park and come into this thing.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
So eventually, some of the guys would do it, would just be like stronger than other guys. A Hakuho kind of the Hawaii League or whatever would start to show up. And pretty soon the family said, you should just keep practicing and, don't come to work anymore. We're going to pay you like, 40 cents a week or whatever. And pretty soon in the 20s, some of those guys did not work in the sugarcane anymore in the stores. Their job was kind of doing a little bit of quote amateur, but in Hawaii, almost like semi-pro sumo. And
Whoa,
Wow.
I didn't know that.
As a
yeah, so
representative
so when
of
I
the
started doing sumo in 73, some of the old guys that were still around in their 80s at that time uh, shared a couple of these clips with us and told us some story. We just sat around, like just fascinated by the history of how this all kind of evolved. So when you say I'm the father of Americans, I'm like, no, I just this little howly guy that came along, and I'm fat howly guy, but just came along in the middle of this whole thing. But no, like as far as being, it's like saying some minor league baseball player is the father of baseball in America. Like, no, dude, Babe Ruth came before. Like, no, I'm just another guy in a long line of people that play the game and love the game. The
yeah.
sport, the lifestyle, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just it's deep and then sad. This was really roaring, and then America and Japan started to have these frictions as World War II came around, and boom,
Right.
Yeah.
Pearl Harbor. Like, And instantly, all the sumo guys were, oh shit, because a lot of Japanese were getting taken away and put into these
Yeah,
camps and so forth,
internment camps,
shipped to
yeah.
the mainland, and they were
Mhm.
especially afraid of any martial artists. They figured those guys are the most dedicated to the emperor and stuff. So those guys would be like bad people to have just walking around in Hawaii because who knows what they could be doing. They're
Right.
warriors, they're martial
Spying
artists.
or
So the
whatever.
judokas and the karates and the sumo guys. So a lot of the sumo guys told me that they dug holes in their backyard and buried like all their trophies, all their kesamo washis,
Really?
all their because if the Americans came to your door with their guns and kind of barged in, which is what they did, and walked around, and they found things that were like from the emperor, these awards that they got, or Hawaii sumo champion fight. They were okay, dude, come, you're coming with us, and they. Bye, mom and kids. See you in 10 years, maybe.
Oh my
And they were
gosh.
gone out the door. So they just said, it's not worth it. I mean, family and love and your life is more important than your sumo memorabilia. So
Right.
they buried it. When they came back after the war and dug it up, most of it was just eaten and gone and rusted. And,
Oh.
so a lot of stuff got lost. But that, like a couple of those films were buried. And when they broke them out after the war, they were still good. So this one
Wow.
old guy, Mr. Okazaki, he was a doctor and a physical masseuse kind of guy for injury. He was a judoka mostly, but he loved sumo. And he's the one that had these great big reels. And I think the Bishop Museum, which is located in Honolulu, it's like a museum of Hawaiian culture. It's a really famous museum in Hawaii, Bishop Museum.
Okay.
About 15 years ago, they did or more. They did a monster 2-month thing about the Japanese in Hawaii, just the arrival of the immigrants,
Right.
the Japanese story. Because just to kind of quickly add to the story a little bit, when the Japanese came then, they first were just the poorest of the poor. They were below the Hawaiians and everybody. The newest immigrant in is always the bottom of the pack,
Mhm.
and they had no money, no anything. So they just worked hard. But after generations, they started getting elected to be like school teachers, and they won some little local elections, like the mayor of this little town or the chief of that little. And it ended up being like Senator Inouye, congressman. Ariyoshi was the governor of Hawaii. I mean, they just rose to the top, and they dominate the Department of Education. They dominate civil service in Hawaii, like almost everything in the Hawaii state government. I'd say half the people are Japanese, and they came from this just little guys scrubbling
Right.
to be this. So that story is all told at that Bishop Museum thing, and part of that story was the sumo thing. But when World War II came, there was no more sumo. There was no more Japanese culture in Hawaii. It was just shut. There was no
Okay.
more kimono festivals, no more bonsai, no more whatever, no bonsai. No, you said bonsai in Hawaii during the war, man. You were either shot or hauled off to prison because
Jeez.
that's a kind of a celebration. So it's just war, and war is
Mhm.
horrible. So I don't blame anybody for what they did. It was kind of bad and sad, but it just nobody knows it. It's like, what do you do with this pandemic? It's kind of like war against this bug. So you fight with it all you can. And some guys say, no, I'm good with it. Another guy's like, no, man, they're like barricading their house because everybody stay out. So same thing happened with that. And the military just said, Japan. So after World War II, about 1948 or 50, a couple of the local guys, Japanese, like fourth generation, Sansei, third and fourth generation, just said, maybe we should start up again. And a couple of Hawaiian guys, a couple of Haole guys, a couple of military guys that had been in Japan after the war and whatever said, yeah, we saw sumo in Japan. It's really cool. They just started to do amateur sumo, but really small. And eventually it evolved that I think there were 4 teams. The island of Kauai had a big team. Hilo on the Big Island had one. Maui had one, and Oahu had one. So there were 4 sumo teams, and each island had a sumo team. Before the war, there were probably 50 sumo teams, Kahuku and Aiea, and Pearl City, and Manawili. Every little sugar camp had its own sumo team. It was just like
Yeah.
major. It was like bigger than softball league, like the old senior softball league.
Yeah.
Everybody had sumo, and there were sumo doyo in every. They all just kind of faded away with the war. They got buried and turned under.
I do
Sure.
want to go back to sumo coming back in the early 50s in
Right.
Hawaii, and within 25 years, Jesse was
Takamiyama.
yeah, Takamiyama.
Mhm.
And if you don't know who Jesse is, if you're a listener and you're like, who are we talking about? Whenever you see old footage of sumo, you will usually come across a very large man with these
Amazing
huge
chops.
mutton chops.
Sideburns, yeah.
From the 70s. That is Jesse.
And always with the orange mawashi.
Ah, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, always with the bright orange mawashi. I'm not sure why, but I don't think I ever saw him in a color other than orange.
Okay.
Really?
And he was from Hawaii, correct?
Yeah. He grew up in a very little town called Happy Valley on the island of Maui, just outside their
That
capital, Kahului.
I know exactly where that is because I've been there, and that is tiny.
Oh, yeah, well, that's where he grew up.
Oh my
Well,
And
he was a big man to come out of such a tiny
Yeah,
town. 'Cause
that's a
what is he,
tiny
six
town.
four, 6'5"? He was
yeah,
a
6'5".
large.
Well, Hawaiian blood, he
Yeah.
was mom and dad, I think, were pretty much pure Hawaiians or close to pure. I'm not positive on that, but I real close to that. And mom was big. I think dad was big. So, just like Akebono's mom and dad were bigger. So big parents tend to have big kids.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
so in Hawaii, that's not that odd to see a guy Jesse size or Chad size. I mean, there's a fair number of them, Samoan, Tongan, Hawaiian, Fijian, whatever, walking around here. When he was young, he got both legs broken. I think he got hit by a truck or a car or something, and both of his legs got broken. And he healed up a little bit, but he was playing football as like a sophomore or a junior. And the football coach told him, you're a pretty tough kid up here, but your legs are weak. He said, well, he showed him the way. Guy goes, there's a sumo club that meets like twice a week over there. You need to go over there in the off season. So he went over there on the football coach's recommendation just to develop strength in his legs. So he started doing the shko and the squats and the suniashi, and he started to get. He ended up all state his senior year because of the work he did in sumo. Plus, he's just a great athlete, to
Yeah.
begin with. But he kind of overcame that initial damage to his legs because sumo is all about the legs. They say the
Yeah.
main thing in sumo is ashi koshi, your legs and your hips. Your
Yeah.
ashi and your koshi is what sumo coaches don't look at a guy's bicep to say, "Oh yeah, we want that." Americans go, "Wow, he's strong." Japanese, they just look down your legs below the belt, the ashi and the koshi. If you got strong legs, we'll take you. If you don't have strong legs, no matter how big your biceps are, your chest, we don't need that.
It's not a
Look at
sport
Abi. I
for
mean, Abi's
people with
really
bird
strong with
legs.
this thing, right? But if
Yep.
you look at his arms, he doesn't have these big muscle arms.
No, he
He
doesn't.
doesn't.
He's just not a muscle kind of guy. But he's got that length and he's got strong legs. And people think, oh, it's arms. Well, he's tricky with his arms, but what's making him win is the drive he's getting from his ashi koshi, from his legs.
Yeah.
It's all below the moashi where the power is coming from. The arms just kind of carry that power forward.
Yeah.
And he's just learned he's so long that he's learned to use them. We talked earlier about the Japanese doing so well in America, in World War II, kind of this catastrophe. A lot of the Japanese kids considered themselves American. Mom and dad were born in Hawaii. Grandma and grandpa were born in Hawaii. I'm American. I'm not Japanese. I want to fight the Japanese that came and bombed our part. They just didn't feel that connect. Like I have relatives from Germany, 3 generations back. I don't fight for Germany. Germany,
Yeah.
okay. I like the food, yeah, and I got some German, yeah. I drink the beer, yeah. But I'm not German, and I care about America. So that's how these kids were. So they went and joined the army at 16, 17, 18 to go and fight. And they were afraid of the Japanese, maybe like revolting against America. So they put them all into one contingent called the 442, the famed fighting regiment of 442. Write that number down and go research it. 442. It's really
Okay.
important. So they formed this 442, and they were guys from California and Hawaii that formed this contingent, and they wouldn't let them fight in the eastern whatever. They put them to Europe. They said, you can't fight in Asia and Hawaii because that's too close to Japan. You're allowed to jump on the Japanese ships and sink us. So they put them in Europe. They said, okay, in Europe you can't hurt us. They were the most famed and feared fighting group in all of Europe for America. They stormed hills. Americans couldn't get in there. The white guys fighting and fighting and fighting. They'd send the 442 and then they'd just go up there and they'd take terrible casualties. That's why Senator Inouye was missing an arm from here down. He got shot off in World War II. He came back home. So the 442 stayed. When they came back from the war, they were heroes. It was, oh, thank you guys. With all that was going on, Grandpa was locked up in an internment camp during the war, and the grandson is fighting in Europe and saving lives, saving American and French and whatever lives. So they just said, you guys are like amazing heroes, kind of like the Navajo code talkers nowadays. Everybody really admires them for what they did in the war.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 442 just kind of like they just stayed together because a lot of them live in Hawaii. So they just would have like weekly meetings. They would just get together, all of them, like 500,000 guys, and they would do all kind of public service events and put on a carnival. They'd raise money for the hospital. They'd raise money for the church or the Buddhist temple. Whatever. So they got together, and in I think the late 60s or early 70s, they started bringing over Ozumo from Japan. Would fly in all the boys for a Jungyo, and they'd have like a 3-day tournament in Hawaii at the big center, the big recreation center, and they would sell 20,000 seats a night to watch, Ozumo live. And
Mhm,
pretty much in the beginning, probably 95% of the audience was Japanese.
mhm.
And, something like, oh, what is that cool thing? And, oh, those are those crazy Japanese wrestlers. I'll go see that. And that's kind of how I got to go eventually to see that in the early 70s. But it just kind of sprung from there. So Jesse flew over from Maui with a bunch of guys to just come watch.
Mhm.
And they asked the amateur guys, somebody talked to somebody, said, this kid is pretty tough. So they let the amateurs kind of like warm up in the afternoon, play on the ring for a little bit. Then they cleared the ring, and then the lights came on and the crowds came in and the pros came out.
Uh-huh.
But one of the Oyakata was sitting there and just watching it. And they said, who's that big Hawaiian boy? He's kind of strong. And, and he didn't know anything about sumo really,
Yeah.
Japan style. But they just, so Jesse talked and took a couple of pictures with him. The guy went home, came back, wrote back to some of the guys in the 442, said, tell us more about that kid. So they kind of told him the story. They wrote back what the story was. The guy said, okay, I'd like to bring him to Japan and try sumo. So Jesse went to tell his mom, and the mom said, no, you're not going to Japan. No, 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 no. Eventually he went, and the rest is, as they say, is history. And
Yeah.
he just took him a couple of years, but once he got it going wrong, just superstardom, and like, wow. And then only way, then when they came back, Jesse came back as one of the superstars. Like, oh, then Hawaii just went crazy. It was about sumo. And
Yeah.
everything in Hawaii was sumo. Every store had a little sumo poster in the corner talking about, eat our sumo ramen ice cream cone, eat our sumo, and just because it was selling. Once I got into sumo in the early 70s, by the late 70s and 80s, I was excited like you guys were. I just wanted to, I said, man, this is just going to go crazy around America. America is going to just be sumo nuts in a few years. But there's football and baseball and
Yeah.
basketball and softball and tennis and badminton and golf and swimming and diving and surfing and I mean
Yeah.
auto
There's a
racing
lot
and
to
just
compete.
so
Mhm.
there's so much competition. And even to this day, I'd say 90% of Americans, when you say sumo, they go, oh, the fat guys, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, they just don't understand. So they'll watch it and say, yeah, wow, those guys are tough. That's pretty cool. I saw way before I started sumo, I saw the James Bond film that had that kind of fun
Uh-huh.
little sumo sequence in there. I went,
Uh-huh.
oh, that's really cool. But I never thought like I really want to go investigate this more. Like, wow, that's cool. But that's just a crazy little thing in Japan. Some little, to us, not whatever big
Right.
time country. But the reality is that it's an amazing sport, and they're great athletes and so forth. But there's a change coming. Right now in America, there's probably 1,000 or more people in every city, county, Texas, whatever, Florida, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, New York, California, getting excited about sumo. And they're a group of 20 guys in this town, and 30 guys, and 12 guys, and 4 girls, and 8 people, and whatever. But it's starting to go from underneath,
Mhm.
because pouring it in from the top wasn't kind of working too much.
Right.
But now there's kind of groundswell coming from underneath. And I think if you guys keep doing what you're doing, and just don't worry how many people are listening. People are listening, and I don't know if it's 800 or 8,000 or 80,000, but I know people are listening, because I have friends of mine say, hey, I saw this thing with these 2 girls talking about the sumo tournament. I said, yeah, they're cool. So, I mean, it is getting out there. You may
That's
not get a lot of
awesome.
feedback right now, but I thought there was no feedback when you guys tell me like, oh, we think you're the fathers. Like, I go, well, I never knew anybody knew who I was or anything about. So
Mm.
it's like, it just stuff happens, and it just things evolve. And I'm not anybody special. Honestly, it's really not. So we need to downplay all of that and just talk about the history of the sport.
I would love to at least acknowledge, we don't have to spend too much time here, but I do want to acknowledge the very special training that you have had,
Uh,
that has inspired a whole host of athletes that came after you, because you are one of, maybe you're the only person that I've ever read that has done this in America. Went to Japan, um, as a sumo wrestler, was invited to go to Japan and spend 3 months in a stable. The first month being treated as a new recruit, the second month being treated as sort of a,
Mm.
middleweight wrestler,
right.
and the third month being treated as a top pro wrestler. And you took all of that experience and they asked you to bring it back to America and to share it, because you're such a wonderful teacher and coach, and they really wanted you to help bring more people into sumo. So I'd love to acknowledge that and hear you talk just a little bit about what you brought back from that and how that affected you.
Okay. I'll set it up a bit. I went to a couple of sumo tournaments, Jungyo by the 4-4-2 group, the Japanese warriors, and was really fascinated. And the amateurs came out before the big show, but like at 7 o'clock, the show started at 8. At 7 o'clock, the amateurs were allowed to come out in the ring and do like sumo practice a little bit. And right near the end of that, their little amateur thing, a couple of the Makusta guys would come out and kind of play around with the local guys a little bit. Just they would like pretend they were beating, but they would just kind of flop them down just to show the audience, like, yeah, these guys look tough, but look at this, boom. And I'm only a 17-year-old kid. That's Makusta, I'm not even up. Wait till the big boys come out in 5 minutes. So I saw that and I thought it was kind of cool. So I got on the beer line, and one of the guys that was doing it happened to be right in front of me in the beer line. I tapped on the shoulder. I said, "Excuse me." It turned out to be this guy should be recognized. He's a naval captain, Arthur Ernie Hunt, 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 and he joined the Navy and went to Japan and lived in Yokosuka for like 10 years in the Navy. He was stationed over there, a career Navy guy. And he met a Japanese girl and fell in love. And the parents didn't want him to get married, our parents, but they got married in Japan. And eventually they came back to America, and she came over, and while he was over there, he just so loved the Japanese people. He married this girl, and he loved the Japanese bar and the Japanese people, just the fun, neat things about Japan. And right outside the naval base, there was this little doyo, and you'd see a bunch of amateur guys that were not big guys. And he would walk by every day, look over there. So one day he walked over, and he was a footballer in high school. He walked over and said, "Can I try that?" "Oh yeah, come on." So so they put him a washi on him, and he played. He beat like 3 out of the 4 guys the first day. But these were just little guys that they were not serious, big time sumo. They were just having fun, kind of like those guys back in Hawaii way back in the day. Just getting together to have fun. And he just fell in love with it. So he ended up really getting involved. Then he got to know Jesse, and he got to know a lot of the guys, and he was friends with a bunch of the Ozumo guys. His wife spoke fluent Japanese. Her family was the samurai family kind of thing. So she had some ins to different people, and just the way she could talk, and she would make special presents or make rice balls for the guy. "Oh yeah," she said, "Mako-san, please come." So Ernie he got to ride his wife's coattails and get to meet a lot of cool people.
Yeah.
And we talked on this beer line, and he said, "Well, tomorrow," he said, it was like a 4-day tournament. So he said, "Tomorrow we're going to be here again about 4 o'clock. We come here, we warm up a little bit." And said, "At 7 we go out." He said, "Why don't you come and just play around?" So I went the next day at 4 o'clock. They put him a washi on me, and I went, "Oh, this is really weird." And we got in the ring, and I played around them a little bit. And he had like 5 teenage boys and a couple of 70-year-old guys, and Ernie was kind of a pretty sturdy guy. So he could beat me, but the other, I said, "This is kind of cool." He said, "We're doing it at 7." I said, "Well, I'll be in the bleachers watching you. There's no way." So 2 years later, they came back again for the next tour, and I'm sitting there watching the first day, and there's Ernie and the guys. I go, "Oh, the guy's still here." So when they finished their little thing, I walked down. There's an intermission. I kind of grabbed. I said, "Hey," he goes, "Hey, come tomorrow." He said, "I said, oh, I'll come back and practice tomorrow." He said, "I thought you were gonna come practice." "Yeah, no, I'm playing rugby. I'm not into that." But I had just retired from rugby, so I wasn't even thinking about doing sumo. So I went the next day, and we did that same practice. He said, "We only have 3 guys come tonight." I said, "Could you please come tonight out and help us with the show?" He said, "We only got 2 kids and me." He said, "It's going to look like a labor." And then, "No, I'm not doing it." He said, "No, please." He kind of a nice guy. He said, "I'll buy you a beer." I said, "All right, I'll do it." So, like I'd done sumo practice for a total of an hour in my entire life, and there I am
Wow.
in front of 20,000 people doing sumo with Ernie, and I got my butt kicked. I just felt like stupid, but went back. So the next day I came back again. I beat him. The next day I said, I'm gonna not leave here with 0-1 record. So whatever. We ended up becoming just the best of buddies. He gave my wife away. The parents couldn't come over in time for our wedding, so Ernie was the guy that gave my wife away to me when we got married. I mean,
Yeah.
to this day we're that close.
Awesome.
But he had so much energy and love for sumo that he spread it to me and to just hundreds of other people. So he really is one of the leaders. I call him not the father, but he's the godfather or something of modern. And if you say modern Hawaiian sumo or modern American sumo, that's different. You say the father of sumo, no. But if you say the father of modern, like after World War II or something, yeah, he really helped. There still were hundreds of guys involved with sumo all over, but Ernie kind of just being this very outspoken, happy, lucky. People just wanted to meet him, drink a beer with him. He just exuded charm and fun, and he's just this great guy. And he spread sumo to everybody. And all of a sudden, like 2 years later, he called me. He said, "John, we're going to take a trip to Japan. He said, we have 20 guys going. I said, no, I'm not, you know, he goes, 2 guys can't make it. He said, Saturday, we're going to have a little tournament. He said, whoever looks like the best 2 guys, we're going to give them free tickets to go to Japan because they aren't paid for. I said, hmm.
Hmm.
My wife was listening. She was still my girlfriend on the phone. She said, I said, I don't know. She was, why you don't want to go? I said, I don't want to like be in that bare butt. She goes, but you mooned people in college. Why? This is a free trip to Japan. So I go, okay, I'm going. I'm going. I'll come down to practice. So I went down to practice, and literally there were like a couple of 60, 70-year-old men that just showed up just for the heck of it, and a couple of like 12, 14, 15-year-old kids,
Yeah.
and me. So I kind of like lift this little boy, push that little. I like nothing to do with sumo. The old guy said, "You just back up so we don't get hurt." Okay, so he just. They said, "Okay, you're going." So I and Japan coaches flew in. They trained us for 4 days, but I mean, they trained us Japan style. So like in the first half hour, I was already like bloody and just exhausted on the floor and
Yeah.
didn't learn anything in those 3 or 4 days. But
Yeah.
off we go to Japan, and when I came home, I think my record was like 140 losses and 1 win. It just, we lost to high school kids, we lost to college kids, we lost to town teams, we lost to the pros, we lost.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody that came along just beat. They, the coach kept telling me you have to charge harder. So I mean, I was like, everybody's just doing Hank on me, stacking aside, a takikomi. I'd say I should start. They said no, charge harder. So I just keep. I'm following the coach's direction. I remember the very last term. I said, I'm not charged. I said, screw this. I'm like a 0 in 168, over my record. I was a wrestler in high school and college, and I'm a wrestler, this is just stupid. So I just stood up and just waited, like some of the guys do nowadays. You see,
Yeah.
order on some of those guys, kind
Mhm.
of weird looking. So I kind of did that a little bit. I could arm drag him, and I could duck under, I could do a double ledge. So I ended up by coming 3rd in that last tournament, out of about
Wow.
40 Japanese guys and about 20 Hawaii guys. I took 3rd. So I came home saying, well, I learned something, so because as long as I wasn't just going crazy, I could beat some of them because we weren't going against the tough guys. We were going against guys that Hawaii had a chance with. And Hawaii was kind of like the Americans all over the United States today. They're good for who they're going against. But you put them against a Japan team, high school team will go 20-0 against our national champions. I'm sure of that. I know that.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. So it is what it is. But we're on our way there. So like American rugby 20 years ago, like no, we couldn't beat the high school or college teams around the world.
Yeah.
Nowadays, no, American rugby is like pushing because more guys are picked up on rugby. I think the same is going to happen with sumo.
Great.
I think it's so exciting to see guys like Caleb here and this guy
Mhm.
there, and this Tom there, and this guy there. It's just starting. I said, wow, this is what we all dreamed about. But I kind of folded my tent and gave up. But when Japan, Ozumo stopped taking kids in Hawaiian kids or Americans into professional sumo, they just said, we have too many. Hawaii is a little island, less than 1 million people. We had Takamiyama, Sekiwaki. We had Punishiki, Ozeki, forever. We had Akebono. We had Musashi Moto, Yokozuna. We had George Kalima, Makuuchi. We had like 20 guys in Makusta. I mean, just kicking butt. And they just went, wait, Tokyo has 20 million people. We've had like 1 grand champion in 30 years. Hawaii
Mhm.
has 800,000 people. You have 2 grand champions in Ozeki and the Sekiwaki, and oh my, no more foreigners.
Yeah.
Hawaii was doing what Mongolia is doing now. Just came in and just kind of started to dominate with size, power, whatever. And just, not so much just the traditional sumo technique. Mongolia's got a little bit better because of their style of wrestling. Those guys are a little bit more accustomed to throwing and
Right.
tossing. Our guys were footballers, so they just came across, they were blasting everybody. So
Yeah.
that's how Jesse and Chad and Pia and all those, they're just, so a lot of the Japanese said, "Oh, those guys don't really have the form," and they were right. We didn't have the form, but we beat them. So
Right.
that's what was happening. Okay, I'm going to shut up and let you ask some questions. I'm sorry, I just run away
No,
here.
but all of this is so fascinating.
Yeah.
See, we could have questions, but I could just sit here and listen to you forever. It's amazing.
Well, I'm sure I'm sure that there are still kids in Hawaii right now that are doing sumo that are studying under Kenna, who learned from you, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Ken has been doing a good job. Someone kind of died. I had a really bad car accident in 2001. A girl came across the center line, hit me head on. and flipped me 3 times over. And I spent months and months in the hospital and years rehabbing, and I'm still rehabbing. So I walk with a bad limp, and my knee doesn't work anymore. My back's all screwed up, but it's okay. Stuff happens. You just learn to deal with it. I was feeling really bad for myself, and then September 11th happened. And I went, "You freaking sister, you got a broken leg and a busted up hip. And you're crying, and there's people falling out of the building, and thousands." So I got over it real fast.
Yeah.
I got over my self pity, but it changed my life a little bit. So I just stopped totally. And then Japan said, "We're not taking foreigners." And I said, "You know what? I just need to rehab myself, take care of my wife, get my kids off to college, just finish all that stuff. I'm done with sumo. Sumo was great, and I'm kind of out." And so nothing happened for a few years, and then Kenna started doing this group. He worked with a Japanese language school program, and he was working with the kids, just teaching them English and writing, and just being a good teacher. And he started doing like fun little sumo out in the grass with the kids. Everybody had to do 5 score, and they had to do songyako, suriashi, and but kids are having all. Pretty soon he got a few guys. He said, "You know what? Let's just," and then Hakuo said, "If anybody has young kids, we're going to have the Hakuo Cup, and we'll pay your way to Japan." Talked to the parents, said, "You want your kids," and this is Japanese language school, so most of the kids had Japanese ties. Not all, there were some Caucasians, but most of them had some Japanese ties. Said, "You want your kids to go to Japan and meet Hakuo?" And wow, so awesome. Moms and dads were bringing musubi and stuff to help support Kenna's, his group at the thing. They're practicing actually in one of those mixed martial arts gyms down in Honolulu. They'd go in the boxing ring. Sometimes they wouldn't even bother spreading the mat. You can just do, you don't have to have a circle to do it. I mean, that's what you need for a tournament. But if you're just training, you don't need that. So he did really good and took the kids to Japan, I think 4 or 5 or 6 times. There's some great pictures and video and stuff of that. I didn't even
Yeah.
know that was really going on. He told me he was doing some stuff. I said, "Ken, if you need help, let me know." And I never really heard much from him. And then I found out what he was. I said, "Oh, Ken, good, good stuff. Way to go." And now there's another group just down the road from where I live that there's 4 or 5 guys that have been practicing sumo for a few months. And I think a bunch of those boys are going to go up to the North American tournament. And I've been going down for the last couple of months and spending an hour or so with the guys, just watching what's going on and just butting in when I think I can have something to say. But they're tough kids, so I think they're between the ages of like 22 and 30 or something. But so I call them kids, but I mean they're men,
Right.
but they're excited. I think there's 3 going to be in the heavyweight, open weight, and 1 is going to be like the middleweight. And so they've got big dreams, and they're excited to go up. And they're all like, "Man, we've never been in a tournament." So they're really excited. And they've only competed against each other. So they have. Now, 2 of the boys actually did sumo way back in 1998, 2000, when it was still going on in my backyard. They
Okay.
actually were part of that program as like 6-year-olds. They said, "Coach, we remember you from back in the day." I said, "Well, I don't remember you, but okay, cool." But so so that'll be fun. So yeah,
Yeah.
Hawaii's got things starting to happen. If they do pretty good and they come back excited, they'll probably pull in another 8 or 10 guys. And they're working under a guy named Wayne Vierra. I don't know if you've heard about Wayne
Yes.
Vierra.
Yes. His
He's a
name has popped
many-time
up.
Hawaii champion.
Yeah.
He joined Takasago Bea and made it up to
Yeah.
Makusta. And they thought, Jesse really thought he had a real bright future.
Mm.
And he had an internal thing, appendix or no, gallbladder, something that had to be cut out. So he got a big scar. So he had to come home and have major surgery and be laid up for a couple of years.
Okay.
So he never went back to Japan. And after 2 years being out of Makusta, you can go back to amateur sumo. That's a Japan rule, but you have to be out 2 years. You can't just like quit pro today and go win the amateur tournament tomorrow. That's not fair. You sit out for 2 years, then
okay.
so he could train, but you can't compete.
Okay.
So he didn't do anything for the first year. He was just healing up. He got married, had a baby, had another baby. And then we saw him and said, "Wait, you want to come back to sumo?" He goes, "Well, I'll come coach a little bit." And all of a sudden he's coaching. And then he said, "Well, let me put the washi on." He said, I can coach better. Pretty soon I said, "Wait, you just beat the state champion from last year." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Maybe I'll go into the tournament this year." So he started training, and then he got sick. So he won like 5 or 6 in a row, state championships in Hawaii, and got to compete in the mainland and compete in Japan a few times. So he never really got back to as good as he was in Japan at that time, because
Yeah.
when you train once a week, it's not comparable to training 6 days a
6
week
days.
and
Yeah.
living in a stable. Just everything is sumo. When you hear it, like wife, kids, job, work, family,
Right.
sumo is
Yeah.
like another ornament, but it's a big tree. So
Yeah.
anyhow, so he's the one that's actually started that group over there, and he's the one that helped train a lot of our boys that went to Japan, because he really knows the in and out. We had another young guy, Harrington Wa'a, that won the the junior world championship. They have this junior championship
Mhm.
for guys under the age of 21. He went over there as a 17-year-old high school kid and was world champion. Now, most people don't even talk about that, but type in
No.
Harrington Wa'a, W-A-A,
Okay.
Wa'a. Put that down and go look him up. Some
Yeah, I
interesting
will.
story about him in Japan. Because I mean, if you want to talk about like some of Hawaii's history or sumo history in America, he's a world
Absolutely.
champion. You know, a lot of
That's
people talk about
amazing.
Manny and stuff, but nobody talks about Harrington. But he was the
Right.
junior boys champion, you know, and Manny was the heavyweight champion. So
Right.
I started trying to get clubs going in California and in Oregon, in Boston and New England,
Mhm.
Hawaii, Long Island, and they all had little clubs, and we got them to go to Japan a couple of times, but it just kind of, it just, there wasn't
Fizzled.
enough people excited, it just
Right.
kind of, but now there's enough people excited that I think this could really, really mushroom, and you guys are going to be like really important. And honestly, as you spread the word about sumo, things like what you're doing is going to be critical to the growth nationally of sumo. And hopefully Canadians will be listening and Mexicans will eventually be listening. So you guys could really be, someday they'll be like interviewing you. Like, so tell us, how did you get involved with sumo? You'll be telling your story. Really.
That would be amazing.
No, but I see it happening. I really do. I don't see it going away.
I think
And
social media is really helping.
Yeah.
Like the
oh yeah, oh for sure.
availability of these,
Exposure through social media and
yeah,
just
and the
podcasting
internet.
in general. Yeah.
It's growing. It's
Yeah,
just growing like crazy, or it seems to us
Yeah.
anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it really does. And I love, no matter Wisconsin, wherever they're at, these guys are putting up their club on social media and showing some of their practices and some of the guys
Yeah.
winning, and some are doing some cool editing like slow motion and thing. It's just like cool stuff, and just
Yeah.
and other people look at that and go, "Hey, Freddie, you want to try that when we go to the gym on Friday?" So I think there's a chance for it to spread because people are seeing that it's fun, it's interesting. Jake Book, the guy out of Kentucky or
Ohio.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ohio. He did a great thing. I think he lives in Kentucky, but it's called the Ohio. So, and I don't quite understand that, but he
Yeah.
and I have talked quite a few times on the phone
He's
and
so nice.
emailed it. Oh yeah, good man. And he got all those little guys going. He had like 3 or 4 practices with like 20 kids, all excited.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of ran out of the wherewithal to just kind of keep going for the time being. And
Mhm.
kids get it like that was in between baseball season and football season
Right.
or soccer season or whatever.
Right.
Christmas, and moms and dads, when there's nothing to go, okay, we'll take Billy to go do the sumo thing, but oh, now he's got a soccer game, we can't go there. So maybe someday sumo will be that important that they'll
Well,
do that.
and I think what I'm realizing is for a lot of people in California and Hawaii and in other places in the US, you have been that person that they've continuously gone back to
Mm.
and said, how do we improve on this? How do we keep it going? And you've consistently been there for them as
Yeah.
they've been growing their own groups.
Uh,
So I
well,
think
that's sweet.
that's the honor that people are trying to give to you and to say thank you for helping us keep all this alive.
Well, people help me, it just, who helped you get here, but you're helping a whole lot of people learn about sumo. So the kudos honestly like belong to you also. I mean, it's just this ongoing, it's this long line of people involved with sumo, and I happen to be in this corner of the line, and whoop, now you guys have popped over that, but we're all doing the same kind. People are so grateful to you because they get to hear these really interesting stories, see what's going on in the world, and you do your coverage of the tournaments live. It's just good stuff. So
Well, tell us about your involvement not only with the U.S. Sumo organization, but also with the International Sumo Federation, because I know you've been involved with all of
yeah,
that.
way back in the day, and then
No,
okay,
not so
so
much anymore.
not much. No, I'm just stepping back in the past 6 months or so. Just
Okay.
as I see this kind of, I say, well, maybe there's hope. So let me see what I can help out a little bit here or there. But
Good.
I know I'm just dropping a little bit of salt on trying to season a growing pot of stew. I'll just a couple of grains of salt on top to make it a little bit tastier. I got real involved with competing as a sumo wrestler and just really got excited about. So I trained really hard and had pretty good success. Got to do a couple of trips in Japan and had success over there, and just came back and had some championships in Hawaii, and I was doing good. And because I was a high school teacher and a
Mhm.
coach, the reason Japan even brought me over, it wasn't because I was a sumo wrestler, because I was like not a sumo wrestler by their standard at all. I mean, I just wasn't. But they just said, here's a teacher, a coach, a guy that's excited about sumo, He's kind of past the age of really like just only focusing on his own sumo. He's got access to a whole bunch of boys at his school. He's got access to boys all around the state because of wrestling, because of my involvement with football. He said, if we're going to spend a few pennies, let's see what this guy can do for us. So I don't. I think some people are not really in Japan not that pleased with what I did with it, but I think others are. Just just you can't please everybody all the time.
Mhm.
But so I got to go to Japan and learn. Came back, my sumo got better, and then I just started pulling more. Eventually, I formed a high school sumo team, and our sumo ring in town got moved, and it got closed down. And so we built a dojo in the backyard, and just all we did was weed whack out and just pound it a lot, and bring some beach sand up and kind of spread it out, and then eventually we dug a rope in like a tawada. But that was just a backyard dojo, like a lot of guys are doing around America now. But we didn't have to go to town anymore, all the time. So we'd go to town like once or twice a month, but 5 or 6 practices would be out here because kids like get off at school at 3 o'clock. And they like from 4 to 5, mom and dad said, you can have some, you came home, did your homework, you got some time off, you can go do what you want. Well, we're going to go down to coach's house and do sumo for a while. And mom and dad said, yeah, great. It's going to make you a better footballer. They didn't care about it. So it was going to make you a better footballer. Like Jesse, that's all they cared about. It wasn't about sumo. But they knew the kids were not in a gang or not getting in trouble.
Right.
And I tried to pull in a lot of boys that didn't even qualify for sports because of behavior or academics or just culturally, like mom and dad just never graduated high school. The kid was just like probably not going to graduate. So
Mhm.
like football was not really a future for them. They couldn't be on the team.
Mhm.
So their choice was like do nothing or just work at home or go join the bad boys and smoke and drink and do some drugs and hang out at the beach park and cause trouble. Or go over to Jack's house and you get a sumo t-shirt and you get a baseball cap and you hang out with 20 guys. We all get a hot dog at the end of practice and we get to go to tournaments and we get to meet Takamiyama and Akibono. Like, it's a pretty easy decision. Yeah, we'll come play with you a bit.
Yeah.
And then I said, we're going to get a trip to Japan with you. Wow. And all of a sudden a lot more boys showed up. We had like 40 boys training for a couple of years hard. I mean, and we were gorillas. We were badass bears. Some of the Japan high school teams came over and we beat them. Just
Nice.
the boys got tough. I mean, we had top athletes, even if they weren't like able to make on the football team. They still were a gorilla of an athlete. They're just a different kind of kid. And so I just thought, not only am I having fun with sumo, I'm also helping the community a little bit, but I'm also
Mhm.
helping these kids kind of say, hey, there's something better for me than just being a punk or just being a dropout.
Mhm.
I was talking school. I was really an excited educator. It's like life is this long thin curtain, and a lot of kids just slide down the curtain and they never can get their hooks in. And some kids are born with Velcro hands. They're academic. They're scholastic. They're great sports people. Whatever they have these skills and gifts, or their parents were college graduates. So they just no matter they just stick. But there's other kids that go shoo and they slide down this long curtain of life and they fall off the bottom. They drop out of school in 9th, 10th grade. The girls all get pregnant, have babies. The kids get into drugs. And I said, so I always told our teachers, we got to do more stuff to get more Velcro on these kids' hands. So what'll work, whatever. So we were giving away free ice creams after school. Every time a kid had an A on anything, you could bring it after school and get a free ice cream with anything that would have an A from the teacher. And we found a few kids were cheating and making their own. No. So, but so the same thing was true with sumo. We just said, let this be kind of a motivation. You come out here, you show up, you work hard, you help clean the ring, you hose it down, you rake it at the end, you fold them and wash these up, you help coach trim the yard a little bit. You're going to get hot dogs, you're going to get a t-shirt, and they didn't have to pay them, you're just going to get them.
Yeah.
And we did fundraisers to get the money to do it. And pretty soon people said, oh, that's just, yeah, we'll give you $100, coach. Oh, hey, he said, I got 20-pound bags of rice. You can have 2 bags of shoes. So we would just be feeding the kids and just, I mean, not that they were starving to them, but just they'd look forward to coming over here, working hard and sitting down with 20 of their buddies at the beach, eating a bowl of curry and rice and a hot dog going, this is pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
Football doesn't give me this for an hour's work.
Yeah.
That was pretty good for me.
Yeah.
So I kind of pimped out sumo a little bit. I had all these little dangles waiting for them, to entice them to come in. And once a kid showed that he was really tough and really serious, then we could kind of really start to crack the whip, literally. I mean, we got pretty rough with our boys over here. And nowadays, I probably couldn't get away with some of that. But we started to get closer to what Japan was, because some of these guys are going to college, they're going to the pros, they're going off to Japan, they're going to international tournaments. So we just said, dude, we're not sending you over there unless you can cut the mustard. So we just intensified what we're doing. I mean, I watch these nice practices around America now, and cool. But I mean, our kids were like laying down, crying, bleeding, literally just suffering. to get the chance to go in that tournament. And then when
Right.
they got to go, like they went over, they just fought like their hearts out because they would die rather than lose. Literally, they would rather die than lose. You know, and I told them, you guys, and the other thing that I loved about sumo was at the end of a match, no matter how good or bad you fight, no matter how tough you are, both guys need to bow, show respect,
Right.
hush up, squat down, do your thing, step out, shut up.
Mhm.
Don't say no, don't I did no, no.
Right.
Oh, you shut up, kill you, you know. No, shut up.
Yeah.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
Are you a man? Then show me you can be a man.
Mhm.
Okay, you got a hat. You just want a hat. Every practice, no, but honestly, every practice we kind of gave the athlete or the sumotori of the day, and they got some kind of little prize. Could be a hot dog, could have
Nice.
been a hat, could have been if I got a banzuke, you got a banzuke, whatever. Somebody
Yeah.
sent me some poster into it, you get a poster. Whoa, cool. Takamiyama a poster. So they got a little something.
Mhm.
And it just we all work for stuff, you know, and
Right.
not just stuff, but we all work to feel good, you know.
Right.
If you're not motivated to do something, you know, people can tell you how many times you hear my you better study that. And the kids say, I don't give a shit what I get in chemistry. I'm not
Right.
studying.
Yeah.
But if your mom, dad said, okay, you get in the chemistry test, you can take the car Saturday night, take your data. Dude, I'm getting an A. I'm gonna die trying to
Yeah.
get that's why I got so excited about it, just because it really fit our kids. And our kids are good kids from good families, but no Velcro, and they're just hanging out at the bottom of the back of campus up by the smokers tree.
Yeah.
And there's 20 of them sitting around there smoking their cigarette at recess. The football players are in the gym lifting or talking to the cheerleaders and you know whatever and signing yearbooks. The other kid's like, ah man, every kid, there's no kid that does not want to be the star quarterback. There is no boy or girl that doesn't want to be the captain of the cheerleaders, that doesn't want to be the speech debate champion, that
Right.
doesn't want to win the basketball championship and be the MVP. They all want that, but they just have no freaking clue how to get there. So
They don't know
I
how.
don't care about that. Screw that's stupid. I'm not. So we got to show them, hey, you can, you know. So just open the doors, and that's what sumo does. So that's why I talked with Jake a lot about this when he's getting young. I said, man, that's just awesome. I said, can make the kids just better kids, even. You know, I think all sports programs do that. You watch Little League or Pop Warner, you got a couple of crazy coaches that lose sight of what their goal is, but the
Mhm.
goal really for athletes is just be physically fit and to enjoy life and be a good person. You know, it's
Mhm.
like, are you a good teammate? That's why you're talking about teamwork.
Right.
Because
Teamwork.
more people get fired in America, not because they can't type fast enough or compute or calculate or dig the ditch fast, because they can't get along with the people behind them. And they say, you know what, we can't work with her. So she gets fired. It wasn't because she didn't have this, she didn't know how to get along with people. So we got to just make people get along more. And that's what sports does. That's what debate does. That's what theater does. That's what doing podcasts does. You know, just
Yeah.
it's honestly, it's cool.
You got to be a
I'm
good
sorry. I'll
citizen.
just shut up. I'm
No,
just
Love it.
blabbing away.
no, you got to be a good citizen of the world.
That's just so important with especially it seems in America, kind of the ugly American sports fan or whatever.
Right.
It's like you just go crazy. Like the Brits are even bad, like soccer riots. You know, like what a soccer riot? Really? Over a soccer game, you're gonna riot and burn the village down because your team won or lost? But that's just kind of, you know, people get just so excited they don't have anything else to hang their thing on.
Right.
So okay, I'm just a fan of Manchester United. And if they lose, I'm gonna burn the city down. Because that's the only thing that I'm excited about in my life. That's the one thing that's really good for me. So if you burn it down, man, I'm getting revenge. Oh, really? Dude, come on. So yeah.
So I don't want to take up your entire day, but I do want to know what you are hoping to see at the North American Sumo Championship in Vegas next week.
Besides us, because we'll be there.
Yeah, well, the first thing I really want to see is kind of shake hands and put a hug or whatever to a lot of these faces that I've seen on Zoom, I've seen on my iPhone, I've talked to, I've texted, I've emailed, I've seen on Facebook, I write back. We've been trapped here in Hawaii for 2 years, so I can't wait to get the hell out of here. We're so over being trapped here. First of all, I just want to go meet everybody because there's so many cool people involved with Sumo. Like, wow, and we all have this common love. So like, yeah, I can told my wife, I get to hang out with my groupies, my crew, my posse, my gang, you know, not my gang, but I get to be part of that posse and gang that
Yeah.
this exciting new thing that's happening. Two, I just want to just help out. I told them that we'll collect tickets at the door. We'll sweep. I don't care what we do. So I don't even know what I'm going to do when I get up there. I just want to go up there and just be in the atmosphere, the aura again. I've been away for about almost 20 years, not quite 20 years. I have really had almost nothing to do with it. So I watch it, I follow it, I like it a little bit, but I wasn't involved. And just about a year ago, I said, "Oh, someone's getting pretty excited. All these things popping up and whatever around the country." And I wasn't doing much because we're kind of COVID trapped here, so
Yeah.
not trailing through the desert or up into the mountains skiing or up in Canada or down in Mexico but no, we're just sitting home on our deck. I mean, it's a lovely deck, but that's what we're kind of doing, you know. So I had more time to kind of go look. I said, "Wow, this is really blowing up." So I just want to kind of help in any way that I can help out. So
I'm really excited to meet you. I'm
I
really
am
excited
too.
to see those Hawaiian sumo
Yeah.
wrestlers that will be
Yeah,
there
yeah.
and to learn more about them.
That is
I
so
think they're going to be
I'm,
fun. I think you're going to have some fun watching them. Yeah, they're fun guys. They're cool.
Thank you so much for today.
Oh, you're
This has
welcome. You're
been
welcome.
such we have been wanting to talk to you for a really long time. So this has been wonderful for us. But
Sorry, I sometimes get excited and get off on a tangent, and I just get all wound
it's
up and go,
great.
"Oh wait,
you're
yeah, wait."
talking to the one
Tangent people.
tangent people. That's the way our brains work.
Yeah. Speaking of tangent, thank you on your Facebook page for the way that you describe taking kilograms to pounds. It's the first
Oh.
way that's ever made sense to me.
Oh,
Did you
cool.
read that
Okay.
on his Facebook page?
Yeah.
Basically, you double the kilogram and then like say it's 160. I think that was the
Yeah.
example you
Yeah,
used,
yeah.
right? You double it to 320.
320.
And then you take that number, you lose the last digit, you take the first two,
Okay, so 36.
32,
32.
Add it to the
32.
320.
add it to the 320,
Okay.
and that's
Because
the
see-
approximate poundage.
Oh wow.
Pounds are 2.2,
Right.
2.2 times kilogram. So quickly, if you double it, that's 2. And then if you just
some.
take that one, you just cut that one decimal off, that's the 0.2, and just add them together. So 80, here, let's test it. 80 pounds. How much is it? 80 kilograms. How
80
many pounds?
kilograms.
Let her
80
go.
kilograms,
160.
160, and then
Right.
I add 8 and 1, and that would be
No,
9.
Nope.
No,
Nope.
no.
Take the first two from 160.
160,
Oh,
so drop
16,
the
so
0.
7.
No, just take the 16.
16.
Add the
Add-
16 to 160.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, 176.
170.
So that fast, you can tell how many.
Did I do
Yeah,
it wrong?
yeah.
Well, I was
No.
really good in math
Okay, so-
once upon a time. It was my
So
strength.
one more time, 90 kilograms.
Double it, 180, and then I take off the 0, and then I add 18 to 180, so 198.
Perfect. That's it.
198 pounds.
Yeah,
It's so
you're-
easy.
Isn't it? It is. But I
Yeah,
can't tell
yeah.
you, we've spent 2 years in the podcast booth, both of us going, we have no idea how much he weighs. We have no idea.
We just knew he's a big boy.
I love you, ladies. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks for, I'm an old fat sitting here in Hawaii, and it's really nice to talk sumo for a couple of cute ladies for an hour. So this was no pain on my heart at all. It was just all fun.
Good.
Thanks,
Well,
guys.
Pure
Appreciate it.
pleasure for us.
We're
Thank
you, guys. Yeah.
You have a great
Yeah.
afternoon.
Will now. Thank you. Yeah. Aloha.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy that view.
Bye.
Male, female.
Oh, that's right.
Love it.
Aloha.